Hello again. I'm on to day 2 of the lipids portion of our Carbs and Lipids lab. And on this day, we are going to get our final measurements that we're going to need in order to calculate the percent fat or lipids in the 3 different kinds of snack food. So just wanted to come back here and show you what things look like here in my oven. So this is my oven. Here's the oven with the door closed. Here we open it up, and I can set the oven to whatever temperature I want down here. So I kept it at fairly low temperature, but I can feel some warmth coming out of there. We're going to shut this off now because we're done with it. And I've got my last filter paper here. I've already carried the other 2 over to the balance. This is my potato chip. So the filter paper has been dried out. So the reason why we use the oven is we had all that petroleum ether that was on our samples, and we needed to dry that out. Here are all 3 of our samples all dried out, and I've got my balance. Turn it on. So we'll be ready to take our data. For my pen, just put down my pen. Here it is. Found my red pen in order to do all this. Okay, so in your data table, this would be the one that says step 10. Step 10, mass of coffee filter plus crushed food after petroleum ether and evaporated out in the oven. So this one here is supposed to be the corn chips. So here were my corn chips. So you can tell they're pretty dried out now. I'll put that on the balance. The balance is reading 3.20 grams. So that's going to go here where it says step 10, 3.20 grams. Oops, can't see it there. There it is, 3.20 grams. Now, let's also get our potato chip weighed. Here's the potato chip. So potato chip is 2.88 grams. So it's a mass of coffee filter plus crushed food after petroleum ether and in the oven. So notice we've lost some mass because before the petroleum ether it was 3.37 grams. Now it's down to 2.89 grams. And that's that fat that we have dissolved out of the food using the petroleum ether. That loss of mass is the lipids that were in the food. And here's our cracker. Our cracker is 3.72. Okay, so we've got our numbers for potato chip, buttery cracker, and the corn chips. And now we think we've got all of the lipids figured out, but actually not, because this paper is absorbent. The paper has absorbed some lipids. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scrape off all of the corn chip from the paper, and then we're going to reweigh the paper, and the extra mass that's on the paper beyond what was on the fresh paper on the first day, that extra mass will be the fat and lipids that are absorbed into the paper. Just going to get rid of all that crumbs of corn chips there. Now I've got a clean, reasonably clean, but this corn chips here are going to weigh 1.48 grams, and that's going to go where it says step 11. So step 11 here where it says massive coffee filter plus crushed food after petroleum ether, after the oven, and after scraping it all off. 1.48 grams. So you can see that's more than the fresh coffee filter. This is dry except for the fat and oils that soaked into the paper. Now let's get the same number for the potato chip. Scrape this off. .35 grams. And then for the cracker, .37 grams. Okay, so just to show you and you might want to pause the video here and write down the data if you don't have it. Here's all of our data values for the Fritos. And here are the data values for the potato chip and the buttery Ritz cracker. If you can't read my writing, just give me a quick email and I'll tell you what the number is. Okay, now I thought to finish up today with this lipids part, and I'll be doing the bananas, the carbohydrates part later, and posting those videos, but for now I'm just going to do this lipids part and post it. I thought I would show you the math with Fritos as our example. So if I do the math for the Fritos, then you can do similar math here on the other page for the potato chip and the buttery cracker. I'm going to help you out here by doing the math on the Fritos. Let me grab a calculator. So in these data tables, if you would, when you're showing work, when you're doing math, always show the work that you use to get the math figured out. So if we start up at the top for the corn chips or the Fritos, we had the mass of the coffee filter with the food in it. We hadn't put any petroleum ether on it yet, so it was before petroleum ether. We'd also written up here what the mass of the fresh coffee filter is. So the mass of the food, before we did anything to it except we did crush it. But crushing something shouldn't change its mass. The mass of the food was 3.68 minus 1.22. So it's the mass of the food plus the filter paper minus the mass of the filter paper. And that comes out to 2.46 grams. So see, I'm showing my work up there for the mass of the food, and that's the starting mass on the food. Put a little box around it. Now, how much lipids were in the food? Well, the filter paper with the food in it weighed 3.68. Remember, that was the same number from up there. But then after we dissolved out the lipids using the petroleum ether, and then we evaporated off the petroleum ether in the oven, the mass went down to 3.20. So that difference, 3.68 grams minus 3.20 grams, is 0.48 grams of lipids that were dissolved out by the petroleum ether. Now notice it says mass of most of the lipids, because remember there was some lipids that were actually stuck to the paper. So that's the lipids that dissolved in the petroleum ether and went through the filter paper, went through the funnel, and came into the flask underneath the funnel. But what about the lipids that stuck to the filter paper? So we're going to do that one next. Calculate the mass of just a few lipids. So after scraping the filter paper, it weighed 1.48 grams. The fresh filter paper, before we put it in contact with food, was 1.22 grams. So that's telling me that 0.26 grams of lipids are stuck to the filter paper because I scraped off all of the crumbs. So I get rid of everything but the lipids. So we actually have two sets of lipids here. We've got the lipids that dissolved in the petroleum ether and went through the filter paper. Then we've got the lipids that stayed stuck to the filter paper. And we've worked it out as to how many grams each of those is. So now we're going to total up the mass of the lipids from the first and second part there, 0.48 grams plus 0.26 grams. And it's telling us that our Fritos had 0.74 grams of lipids in it. So our Fritos contain 0.74 grams of lipids. Now the percent would be dividing the 0.74 grams of lipids by the total mass of the food before we did anything to it, which was 2.46. So the part that's lipids divided by the total times 100 gives us our percent, 0.74 divided by 2.46. So I get that it is 30.1% or 30%. Since it's 0.74, that's only 2 sig figs. So I'll say 30, but I'll put a decimal at the end. 30% lipids. So Fritos actually have quite a bit of lipids in them, quite a bit of fats and oils in Fritos. Fritos are fairly oily. Now, calculate the kilocalories from the lipids. The hint is use your total mass of lipids times 9 kilocalories per gram. And we're going to report this to the whole number. So our kilocalories would be 0.74 grams of lipids, that's the total lipids we'd calculated, times 9 kilocalories per gram, and that is 0.66, which I'm going to round to 7 kilocalories from lipids. So you'd get 7 calories from fats by eating, I think it was what, 2 or 3 of the Fritos corn chips. So there we have all the math and all the calculations for the Fritos, the corn chips. And now all you have to do is do the same math, showing the same kind of work for the buttery cracker and the potato chip. All right, so that should wrap up the lipids portion of this lab.